Dante Brooks, 34, auto mechanic, returned home at 4:30 a.m. on March 14, 2024, after completing his night shift at a repair shop in Baltimore, Maryland. Upon arrival, he saw that the front door was damaged, the frame splintered, and yellow police tape sealed the entrance. Inside, the apartment was in disarray, furniture overturned, drawers open, papers scattered. A neighbor, Marlene Carter, 58, nurse, told him that police units had arrived around 3:20 a.m. She reported hearing shouting, a woman's voice, then a single gunshot. At 8 a.m., Dante received a call from the Baltimore Police Department requesting his presence at the medical examiner's office. There, through a glass partition, he identified his wife, Alicia Brooks, 31, school psychologist. Cause of death: gunshot wound to the chest, fired from close range. Time of death: approximately 3:14 a.m. The preliminary police report classified the case as accidental death during lawful execution of duty. It cited an anonymous call received at 3 a.m., alleging drug activity at the Brooks residence. The officers claimed that upon entry, the suspect reached for an object resembling a firearm, prompting one officer to discharge his weapon. Dante read the 2-page report multiple times. The narrative conflicted with everything he knew about his wife. Neither he nor Alicia used drugs. They did not keep alcohol in the home. No controlled substances or weapons were recovered during the search. The listed evidence log was nearly empty, containing only a broken phone case, a laptop, and a damaged lock. 2 days later, after the investigation team released the property, Dante returned to the apartment. The extent of damage indicated forced entry. The basement door had been broken from the inside, the lockplate ripped from the wood. On the floor, beneath shifted boards, he found an empty space about half a meter deep, a clear hiding spot recently used. Whatever had been hidden there was missing. On Alicia's desk, her laptop was open. The last accessed file was a folder of scanned documents dated 2010, labeled Holmes_case. The files included police statements, autopsy summaries, and photographs related to the death of Darius Holmes, 19, shot by a police officer in 2010. The witness list contained one name that froze Dante: Alicia Grant, age 16, her maiden name. Darius Holmes had been Dante's closest friend during childhood. They grew up in the same block in West Baltimore, attending the same school. After graduation, Darius was arrested for possession of a controlled substance, served 5 years, and was released in mid-2010. 1 month later, he was shot and killed during a police encounter. The report at the time claimed he resisted arrest with a weapon. The funeral had been closed casket. Dante remembered Darius's mother, Gloria Holmes, shouting that her son had been executed. The investigation ended within 2 weeks as justified use of force. The reappearance of that case in his wife's files 14 years later suggested deliberate research. Alicia had kept copies of official documents not available to the public. The presence of the empty hiding spot indicated that she was concealing materials connected to that case. At her funeral on March 19, 2024, Dante noticed 5 uniformed police officers standing separately from the other attendees. None approached the family. One, a younger man later identified as Officer Daniel Vasquez, appeared visibly shaken, avoiding eye contact. During the service, Alicia's colleague Sharon Lewis, also a school psychologist, handed Dante a folded note that Alicia had entrusted to her 2 days before her death. The note contained a short message: "If something happens, look for Lieutenant Connor. He killed Darius, and not just him." That night, Dante received a message from an unknown number. It contained a single audio file lasting 8 seconds. The voice, distorted electronically, said, "Your bitch stuck her nose in other people's business. Forget it, or join her." The number was untraceable, registered through an encrypted online service. Dante submitted the recording to the police as evidence. No official acknowledgement followed. Over the following days, Dante reviewed Alicia's laptop. Most personal files were intact, but several recent documents and browser histories were deleted. The recycle bin had been emptied. A few log entries suggested recent external drive connections. The timeline of her last activity showed she had opened the 2010 case folder shortly before the shooting. In the basement, Dante photographed the damaged lock and floor cavity. He listed every missing or displaced item. A metal lockbox once stored there was gone. He suspected it contained the materials Alicia had hidden. Her notebook, normally kept near her desk, was missing as well. Dante reconstructed the event sequence based on police documentation and the neighbor's account. 3 a.m. Anonymous call reporting drug activity. 3:10 a.m. Officers dispatched to the Brooks residence. 3:14 a.m. One shot fired, fatal wound to Alicia Brooks. 3:20 a.m. Police units cleared the scene. 4:30 a.m. Dante returned home. No witnesses confirmed any resistance or presence of a weapon. No officer injuries were reported. The anonymous call was traced to a disposable prepaid phone activated the day before and deactivated immediately after the shooting. No prints or DNA were recovered from the device. Dante examined the officer list in the police report. Among the responding officers was Lieutenant Mark Connor, the same name mentioned in Alicia's note, and the lead investigator listed in the 2010 Holmes case. At the time, Connor had been a patrol officer involved directly in the shooting of Darius Holmes. His later promotions matched the career path typical for officers cleared of misconduct investigations. On March 17, 2024, 3 days after the shooting, an older Honda stopped outside the auto shop where Dante Brooks worked. A man in plain clothes approached the service bay, handed Dante a small flash drive through the open window, said only his name, Tyler Reed, and left. Reed was later identified as a detective assigned to a neighboring district. The drive contained a single video file labeled with the date of the shooting. Dante transferred the file to his home computer. The recording showed a low-angle perspective from a shelf in a basement storage area. A timestamp indicated 3:12 a.m., March 14, 2024. The footage captured Alicia Brooks crouched over a place in the floor, lifting a board and placing a folder inside. She closed the board, remained crouched, and listened. Footsteps approached. Alicia turned, raised both hands and called out. She was unarmed. A uniformed officer entered the frame, moved behind her, and fired a single shot at close range. The camera registered motion and audio distortion for several seconds. When the image stabilized, Alicia lay motionless. Dante replayed the file repeatedly, noting frame numbers and timestamps. He froze images to document the position of hands, the absence of a weapon, and the identifying features on the officer's uniform. The official incident report described resistance and an attempt to grab an object resembling a firearm. The video contained no indication of such resistance. The officer who fired was identifiable in the recording by a badge detail and a partial nameplate reading M. Connor. Seeking context, Dante examined Alicia's belongings. In a worn diary, he found entries beginning in 2010. The earliest entry described an incident from August 2010, when Alicia, then 16, observed police officers restraining Darius Holmes, then 19. Her account stated she had been returning from a friend's house, seen Darius pressed against a wall with his hands visible, and watched him collapse after multiple shots struck his back. She recorded that 2 detectives subsequently visited her and pressured her to change her statement, warning that her family might suffer if she did not comply. The official case record contained a witness statement that contradicted her initial account. That version read, in part, "I do not recall clearly. It was dark. I may have been mistaken." The diary repeated a compact phrase across multiple entries. "I killed Darius with my silence." Over the years, the entries tracked attempts to locate original records, photocopies of police documents, and references to archival discrepancies. Recent pages, dated March 2024, described a counseling session with a student, Ethan Connor, age 14, identified as the son of Lieutenant Mark Connor. The notebook recorded that Ethan had taken from his home a sealed envelope from a safe containing photographs of men lying motionless in street scenes. Alicia noted recognizing one photograph as Darius Holmes and recorded the boy's expressed fear of his father. A bank location and a box number were listed in the diary. On March 20, 2024, using a small brass key Dante found in Alicia's purse, he accessed safe deposit box 47B. The box contained 7 case folders, photographic prints matching the diary descriptions, multiple ballistic printouts, and a USB drive labeled Evidence. Paper copies included documents that differed from public records. Originals and full-page autopsy notes contrasted with redacted or incomplete versions in the municipal file. Several ballistic reports bore annotations and serial numbers that did not appear in the versions filed with the police department. The USB contained a second recording, dated August 2010. The handheld footage showed an alley. Darius pinned against a wall, his hands visible and not holding a weapon. The clip captured 3 shots from behind. "Off camera," a voice said. "Dude, what did you do?" He wasn't resisting. A figure identified by later analysis as Mark Connor addressed the cameraman. "Turn that off, or you're next." The recording ended abruptly. Dante cataloged and photographed each item from the bank box and the diary. He cross-referenced dates, case numbers, and the names that appeared in the material. The pattern suggested multiple incidents over a 14-year period with a common element: contested use of force findings favoring clearance and promotion for a single officer. The collected documents showed internal deletions, redactions, and missing chain of custody entries in official records that contrasted with intact originals in Alicia's cache. The sequence of discoveries established motive and proximate cause. Ethan Connor's disclosure to Alicia explained how sensitive material left his family and entered a school counselor's care. Alicia had secured backups in a bank box and maintained a hidden cache at home, indicating an awareness of risk. The existence of those files gave a plausible explanation for the anonymous call and the forceful search preceding her death. The flash drive from Detective Reed supplied visual confirmation of Alicia's last moments and directly contradicted the official narrative of resistance. On March 22, 2024, Dante Brooks delivered the entire collection of materials, videos, scanned case files, diary pages, and digital copies, to Special Agent Carol Mitchell of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Baltimore Field Office. The handover was recorded in a chain of custody log. During their meeting, Mitchell assured him that the evidence would initiate a federal investigation into patterns of misconduct, but warned that due process would be slow. Warrants, union protections, and jurisdictional limits would extend the timeline. Her estimate for a formal indictment was no less than 6 months. Dante returned to his position at the auto repair shop and attempted to resume routine life. His employer noticed his detached behavior, but did not question him. For the first week, he heard nothing further from investigators. On March 29th, he saw a public report confirming that Lieutenant Mark Connor had been placed on administrative leave with pay pending internal affairs review. The report emphasized that no criminal charges had been filed. A week later, Agent Mitchell contacted Dante to update him. The primary witness from the 2010 incident, Officer Daniel Vasquez, the officer who had recorded the original video, had withdrawn his willingness to testify, citing concern for his family's safety. The federal ballistic analysts had raised questions about the chain of custody for several items, including shell casings and photographs recovered from Alicia's deposit box. Defense attorneys were already preparing motions to suppress those materials on procedural grounds. Mitchell stated that the Department of Justice would pursue all available remedies, but her tone indicated low confidence. On the evening of April 9, 2024, Tyler Reed appeared again at the auto shop. He waited until closing time, entered without introduction, and handed Dante a folded sheet of paper. The note contained an address to a warehouse in the industrial district near the harbor. Reed stated calmly, "Connor meets Jason Blake there twice a month. Blake's a businessman, used to move narcotics. Connor's been his protection for 15 years. You know what that means." Reed paused, then added, "The system won't punish him. But you can. I'll cover you if it comes to that." He left before Dante could respond. Dante destroyed the note immediately, shredding it into pieces. For 3 days he avoided acting. He worked, ate little, slept less. On the night of April 12th, he sat in silence beside the empty side of the bed. The photograph of Alicia on the nightstand faced him. On the shelf above the desk stood a framed graduation picture of Darius Holmes. Both faces were reminders of a pattern: lives taken, files closed, no accountability. On April 15th, Dante visited an acquaintance, a former co-worker known for side dealings in firearms. Without questions, the man provided a compact pistol, a box of ammunition, and a suppressor. Dante had never fired a weapon in his life. Over the next 3 nights, he drove to an abandoned quarry outside Baltimore and practiced firing into sand piles until he could maintain control despite the recoil. His hands trembled, but his aim stabilized. Using information found online, Dante located a basic phone monitoring exploit and installed a tracking application linked to Connor's personal number. The software recorded approximate movements. For several days, he monitored Connor's routines, visits to private addresses, meetings with 2 other officers, and irregular stops near the Harbor District. On April 20th, Connor's phone signal paused at the same coordinates listed on Reed's note. The meeting with Jason Blake was scheduled for late evening. Dante arrived at the warehouse 1 hour before the appointment. He parked 2 blocks away and entered through a side door left unsecured. The structure contained rows of boxes and industrial equipment. He positioned himself on the upper level, waiting. Shortly after 10 p.m., 2 vehicles arrived. Blake entered with 2 armed guards. Connor followed with 2 officers later identified as associates from his division. The conversation below was audible enough to reconstruct basic content. Blake offering payment for Connor to step back due to increased federal attention. Connor rejecting the proposal and threatening to reveal details of prior operations. Tension escalated. Dante descended the stairs wearing a balaclava and gloves, weapon drawn. The first guard reached for his sidearm. Dante fired once, striking the man's leg. The second guard moved forward. Dante struck him across the face with the pistol. The 2 officers accompanying Connor drew weapons. Dante fired 2 rounds blindly. 1 officer fell with a shoulder wound, the other retreated. Connor attempted to flee toward the exit. Dante grabbed a metal pipe from the floor and struck him across the back of the head, knocking him down. He restrained all 5 men with zip ties taken from the warehouse supply crate. His hands shook from adrenaline, but his actions were methodical. Connor looked up from the floor, recognized him, and smiled faintly. Dante pulled out his phone, opened the video file showing Alicia's last moments, and placed it in front of Connor's face. The room was silent except for the recording. Connor closed his eyes. Dante forced them open, pressing the barrel of the pistol against his forehead. For several minutes the video looped. Then Dante positioned Connor on his knees, hands behind his head. The same posture Alicia had taken in the basement. The weapon was steady, but his breathing irregular. Connor did not speak or plead. Dante's memory aligned the present image with the morgue photograph of his wife. He fired 1 round into Connor's chest. The sound was contained by the suppressor. Connor fell backward and stopped moving within seconds. The 2 wounded officers stared in silence. Dante turned toward them, recognizing both from the official team roster at the Brooks residence on the night of Alicia's death. They had done nothing to stop Connor. He fired 2 quick shots, 1 into each chest. Both collapsed. Blake began shouting, offering money and information in exchange for his life. Dante listened without expression, then fired once more. The shot struck Blake in the head. The guards, tied and wounded but alive, remained on the ground. Dante left them, walked out through the rear exit, and removed the balaclava. At a drainage canal a few blocks away, he burned the gloves and mask, dismantled the weapon, and dropped the pieces into the water. He returned home before midnight. On the morning of April 21st, 2024, employees at a Harbor District warehouse in Baltimore found 4 men on the floor of the main bay. Jason Blake, 45, local businessman with prior narcotics ties, deceased from a head wound. Lieutenant Mark Connor, 41, deceased from a chest wound. 2 police officers from Connor's unit, both deceased from gunshots to the torso. 2 private guards were located nearby with leg and facial injuries. Both were alive and transported to the hospital. Responding units secured the scene. Witnesses from adjacent properties described an African-American male of medium height, leaving the building shortly before midnight. The description narrowed the field for investigators. On April 22nd, Special Agent Carol Mitchell reviewed preliminary scene work, including zip ties consistent with hardware found on site, impact marks on the stair rail, and a discarded balaclava fragment recovered from a drainage canal 2 blocks away. She then drove to the auto shop where Dante Brooks, 34, worked the day shift. She approached his bay, identified herself, and stated he was under arrest on suspicion of multiple homicides. Dante set down his tools, faced away from the workbench, and extended his hands. He did not resist. Handcuffs were applied at 10:18 a.m. Dante was booked into the Baltimore City Detention Center. For 3 days, he remained silent during intake and the initial attorney consultations. On the 4th day, April 25th, Officer Daniel Vasquez, 27 through counsel, delivered to federal authorities a full-length recording of Alicia Brooks's death and a sworn statement about Connor's involvement in earlier incidents, including the 2010 killing of Darius Holmes. With Connor deceased, Vasquez stated he no longer feared retaliation. The submission resolved key questions about Alicia's final minutes and corroborated the pattern Alicia had documented, but it did not alter the core facts of the warehouse homicides. During pretrial, Gloria Holmes, 63, mother of Darius, requested a visitation. The meeting occurred on May 1st. Sitting across the glass partition, she regarded Dante for a long period without speaking. She lifted her hand and placed her palm against the glass. Dante matched it. She produced no statement for the record and departed after 10 minutes. The state charged Dante Brooks with 4 counts of first-degree murder, unlawful possession of a firearm with a suppressor, and related offenses. The trial began on June 3, 2024, in the Circuit Court for Baltimore City. The prosecution's case relied on location data from Connor's phone, a basic tracker later linked to a device associated with Dante's internet account. Residue consistent with burnt synthetic fabric recovered along Dante's commute route. The 2 surviving guards' statements describing a single masked intruder, and circumstantial linkage between motive and the killing of Alicia Brooks. The defense sought to exclude elements of the digital tracing and argued that Dante acted under extreme emotional disturbance. Court-appointed counsel proposed a theory of temporary insanity and diminished capacity following his wife's death. Dante declined that approach. On June 24th, he addressed the court briefly. "I was of sound mind. I understood my actions. I have no regrets regarding Connor and those who enabled him." The judge cautioned him about self-incrimination. He confirmed his statement. Expert testimony followed on both sides concerning firearm discharge patterns and the suppressor's acoustic signature. Neither side disputed that shots were fired at close range. On July 2, 2024, the jury returned verdicts of guilty on all 4 murder counts and the associated weapons charge. At sentencing on July 9th, the prosecution requested life imprisonment. The court imposed a sentence of 25 years without the possibility of parole, citing premeditation, multiple victims, and the calculated nature of the attack. Dante stood without visible reaction. He was transferred to a Maryland maximum security facility later that week. Within custody, Dante was assigned to a standard cell. On the cinder block wall above his bunk, he taped 2 photographs. Alicia Brooks, 31, school psychologist, and Darius Holmes, 19, former student and childhood friend.